You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 188, Getting the Help You Need, an entrepreneurial case study with Janelle McNeal. If you're a business owner who wants to improve your time management and elevate your productivity so you can maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm really looking forward to you meeting our guest, my client, Janelle McNeal. Dr. Janelle McNeal is the owner and director of True North Counseling and Development. She works primarily with women entrepreneurs and professionals to help them achieve their unachievable goals and dreams. She provides counseling as a licensed psychologist to help those experiencing stress, perfectionism, procrastination, and difficulty achieving work-life balance. She also facilitates masterminds where ambitious, high-achieving women have a space to come together and support one another as they develop professionally and personally. As a result of working with Janelle, people describe having more clarity, peace, confidence, so they can live the life they dreamed of. In fact, the True North tagline is, "Feeling better is just the beginning." Her ultimate goal is for people to thrive as a result of their experience at True North. I asked Janelle to come on Productivity Straight Talk because she is so amazing and interesting to speak to. You may know that one of my favorite formats of this podcast are entrepreneurial case studies. And I thought, what better way to have her come on, pull back the curtains to her entrepreneurial journey, share with us some ahas, and she's also going to be sharing with us why she joined Leverage Lab and what she's gotten out of that experience while being inside Leverage Lab. If you want to learn more about Leverage Lab, now is a great time to do so. As of the time of this episode, going live on Monday, February 1st, we are in the middle of a promotion that ends at the end of the week, Friday, February 5th. We have a special promotion going on where you can come into Leverage Lab, a coaching, training, and accountability experience. This has been designed for the busy business owner who wants additional support in growing their business. They want additional support leveraging themselves, their time, their organization, and their people as they grow their teams. Leverage Lab is a monthly membership, so stay as long as you want. Love it or leave it. My promise to you inside Leverage Lab is that you will experience transformational and empowering coaching, exceptional, simple, and impactful training, and the support of a collaborative community. So for a limited time, I am offering $150 off your first month. So if you've been a listener of Productivity Straight Talk and you've been wondering, what is it like to work with Amber? Perhaps you've been considering joining one of my master classes or workshops, or even working with me in my one-on-one coaching program. Well, now is your chance to work with me at a heavily discounted rate with no long-term commitment. To learn more and join us inside Leverage Lab, head on over to amberdelagarza.com/leverage lab. Again, that's amberdelagarza.com/leverage lab. Now, if you're listening to this episode anytime past February 5th, you can still join us inside Leverage Lab. This is just a limited time special offer to get $150 off your first month. And now, let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. Janelle, how are you today?
I am great, Amber. Thank you so much for letting me be here today.
Absolutely. I reached out to you because I thought you would be an amazing guest on Productivity Straight Talk. And you and I have gotten to know each other recently. And I'm always so intrigued with what it is you do and your story. And I thought my audience needs to hear this about your journey of entrepreneurship. And so today, before we jump in, I gave a little bit of your official bio, but I always like to start off and just ask my guests to share a little bit about themselves in their own words.
Sure. Well, I am a psychologist. I live in Lexington, Kentucky, and I really, really enjoy working with women entrepreneurs and women who are professionals and really just high-achieving, growth-oriented women who are trying to start off where they are and get to somewhere else where they want to be. And so the lovely thing about this field is that we really can sort of say, this is the work, this is where I do my very best work, and we can end up kind of niching down to that level. So I'm at the point now where I've been able to really niche down to being the person who works on those, like all kinds of issues, but for that population.
Excellent. And so my first question that's coming up is, like, there's so many people, no matter what industry they're in, they're told, niche down.
Yes.
You could say that word so many different ways. So I'm probably saying it wrong. You're probably saying it right. But I say niche down into a specific demographic or who you serve. Why don't you share with us, let's take us back on how did you get started into counseling and maybe some of your journey of how did you end up that your calling was to serve entrepreneurial and professional women?
Sure. Well, actually, the story is a little bit funny of how I got into counseling. Usually you sort of expect someone to say, I had this serious calling, that sort of thing. I actually got into counseling because when I was in about 8th grade, one of my very best friends had loads of clothes. She had sisters and she had so many clothes. And I always felt like I didn't have enough clothes and I always wanted more clothes. And I asked her, what do your parents do? I knew that her mom stayed at home, but I asked what her dad did for a living, and he was a psychiatrist. And I was like, well, what's that? What does he do? And she said, well, he just basically talks to people about their problems. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do that right now. This is what I do. I'm doing this. I'm not getting paid. I'm always in trouble in school for talking to my friends and passing notes, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a psychiatrist. So I decided in 8th grade, I actually went to college, was pre-med because I was going to be a psychiatrist. And then organic chemistry happened and I realized actually what I really want to do is just talk to people about their problems, but not have to go to medical school in order to do that. So that's how I ended up getting into psychology. And then basically it's been a serendipitous kind of route from there. So I ended up I thought I would be in university counseling centers because I really enjoyed that work and I loved working with them. Then I had my first child and thought, I'm quitting. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. So I actually did that for a couple of years. I was a stay-at-home mom. And from there, I got really interested in mindfulness and women's development and what it was like to be a mother and these different things. And gradually, my interests moved into women who were owning their own businesses because I found that being no longer working at the University Counseling Center and instead being in private practice was such a good fit for me wanting to be as much hands-on as I wanted to be as a mom, but also be able to do what I really loved career-wise. And so that's kind of how that started. And I spent more and more time with women who were running their own businesses and starting their own businesses. And that's how I started doing this area of work.
Oh my gosh, what a great story. So you have to tell us the end of that story. How's your wardrobe?
Right now, COVID-19 is going on. And so the top of my wardrobe is I'm feeling really good about it. And the bottom I'm feeling really good about because it is super comfy. It is just super comfy. So my wardrobe definitely, it got much better. But there's always work to be done. So.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's awesome. So I have a similar story in
Really?
High school. I had known someone that was in real estate. And so I wanted to be in real estate for the sole purpose is that I thought they just drove nice cars and looked at nice houses and like had the life. And I interned 2 years in high school. I went to college for real estate. I got licensed really young, like 19, and sold real estate for several years. But that was the beginning of my career, all because of something that got seeded very young about like, what's that experience? Because that's not the experience. That's not the life of all real estate agents by any means. But then I also just one thing after another found my own calling that had started in real estate, all because I wanted to drive a certain car and those things that matter when you're that young and kind of draw your attention to it. Yes. All right. So then that brings you, how long have you been a counselor?
I have been a psychologist I've been licensed since 2005. 2005 was when I was licensed. So that basically means that I can work on my own and I could do private practice. And so I started actually doing private practice. I sort of eased into it again based on what was going on with my family. So I started doing that. I've been doing that now about maybe 13 years. I think I started my practice about 2007. However, I was in solo practice. So then just since 2019, I decided, hey, I would really like to have a group practice. And so I'm a little bit in a startup. I'm in a weird kind of position where I've been doing counseling for a really long time, but I'm still fairly new at having a group. And having like an administrative assistant and another psychologist on staff and just those sorts of things that are really different from when I was just a solopreneur.
Yeah. And with that transition, how often or maybe how many hours a week are you wearing your business hat and how many hours a week are you wearing your counselor hat, right? Because you have to go from, providing the service you grow your business through, right? And then you also have to be like, making decisions about your office and running the day-to-day operations. So what's that percentage, would you say?
I would say I probably spend maybe 70% in the business, like trying to run it, and maybe about 30% actually seeing my clients and doing things that are clinical.
Okay. And is that a percentage that you have grown into because that's what you want? You like to wear the business hat and still dabble in what brought you here, which is counseling?
Yes, I do. I mean, right now that percentage feels really good. And so it's nice to be able to do both. It's nice to kind of have that. I can get frustrated sometimes because I'll feel like I'm not moving forward as quickly as I would like to with the business part of the practice, but I love my clients and I love the work that I do. And so it's sort of like, okay, I'm only one person.
Right.
Actually, which brings me to, there was one thing that I've listened to your podcast for a long time, and which is part of why I'm so honored to actually be on it. And I remember there was one woman, and I cannot remember the name. I'm sure you'll remember her name or will remember like the number of the podcast. But you said to her, I remember I was in a parking lot, like eating ice cream.
Isn't that interesting how you remember where you're at and what you're doing?
Yes, I was in a bank parking lot listening to your podcast and just like eating ice cream, just having like a break. And she was talking about, she was trying to be like a stay-at-home mom. She was running this business. And you just point blank said to her, so basically you're trying to be a full-time stay-at-home mom, and you're also trying to be a full-time entrepreneur and run this business. And you're like, you just can't do that. Like, it's not possible. And I was like, what? I was just like, I did not realize that. And I realized that is what I was trying to do. I had been, and I was feeling just worn down and worn thin. And I had completely unrealistic expectations for myself. But to hear it, and it was one of those things that I'm sure I've said that probably a zillion times to other people. Right. But it was like, oh, yes, other people have this issue, not I. And then it was like, oh my gosh, I just heard it. And it was like, oh, and that was so helpful to me just to hear that.
And for the 180 episodes I've done, I'm just guessing what I said next was something along the lines of, it's okay to ask for help. That it's us that puts that pressure on ourselves, thinking we have to do this full time and this full time, and then also be, for women, it's a sister and a daughter, and all of the things. And this is true for men too, but I do think that it's worth having this conversation that women often overcommit to a lot of roles and put that on themselves. That if I want to be ambitious and grow my business, I can't falter in any other area, or be seen to be perceived to falter in any other area of their lives.
Yes, that's such a good description of so many. That's sort of just like a really great description of people that I work with, where they're high achieving, right?
Yep.
And they may not feel high achieving because they oftentimes are perfectionistic. And so they feel like, oh, I'm not doing well enough, or I'm not doing this enough, or I'm not doing that enough, or I didn't bake the cookies for the classroom party. And I used to bake the cookies, or I feel like my mom baked the cookies, right? Or my grandmother would bake the cookie. Like other people bake the cookies. Why am I not that mom? And then we talk about, okay, so what is it that your children really need from you, right? At this point in your life, what do they really need? Can you maybe have a conversation with them about that, depending on their age, and see what they need? Because we often just assume that they need us to like bake the cookies, when really they kind of wish that we had gone, somewhere and gotten like bought donuts or something, or done something completely different, right? And so that's part of it, is sort of figuring out what sort of pressure are women putting on themselves, or just really all women, not even just if you own your own business or if you are in business. Just so many women put tons of pressure on ourselves, and then we try to do what is impossible to do, and we always feel like we're failing. It's just this constant sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm failing. I feel bad. And so what's really helpful is when I can work with someone and help them to see that this is unrealistic, and what would really make you happy? Like what lights you up? What makes you sing inside, right? What makes your heart sing? We get a really good idea of that. And then it's like, okay, then what do we need to do? What do we need to put in your life to make that happen? And what do we need to take out of your life? And key point that you mentioned, how can you get help? Because we just plain old all need help. With everything. I don't, it's really hard. I know from experience, it's hard being a mom who's at home 24/7. That is some extremely hard work. It's also hard running your own business and having these ideas and wanting to see them come to fruition. And so how we all need help with every single thing that we're doing, basically. That's what I figured out.
Yes. And I think that the work you do is so important, because women need that outlet to, externally process and talk it out, and, find their own permission to see that it is okay to ask for help, or, to even almost, I'm sure you help them put a mirror up to see some of the unrealistic expectations they hold for themselves. That is the work I have done. I've done that with my own counselor, and all transparency, right? Like to me, it was really, really worth doing this type of work. And I have a business coach, but I also have a counselor, because I need that space where I can, work through some of the cultural norms of being a woman. And, my husband is Hispanic. And so there came with some cultural expectations there, and not even from him, just like I thought they were there from his extended family, right? And just breaking through so many things that once I really started looking, who was the worst? It was me. I had the best stories about everything, right? And to share with you, and I've shared sprinkles of this in different podcasts, and this is all organically coming up. And I think this is the best way to serve the audience right now is just to be completely transparent, is like, I actually had the conversation of love languages with my husband and my son, right? My son is 10 now, but this started years ago. And my son's love language is quality time. And I thought it was, my love language is acts of service. So you know where this is going. I wanted to acts of service the love out of all of them. And I was burning myself down. My husband had the best lunches, and the dinners were done, and the house was taken care of. And like, I wanted acts of service because I love them dearly, before I realized we love the way that we want to be loved.
Right.
When I asked them what they really care about, nobody cared who did the laundry, just that it got done. Nobody cared who ordered groceries or who got the groceries in the house. They just wanted healthy meals. And so it gave me permission to question some of the ways that things had been done, because I wanted to shift a lot of my time and focus into the business. But I was also transitioning from being a stay-at-home mom. My husband had the best lunches. Like when I was a stay-at-home mom, like his sandwiches were like 6 inches tall, like and like a foot long, and had all the things and all the fixings. And so it was this shift of like, will he still feel loved? Will he feel like I'm choosing my business over him?
Yes.
And I'm very lucky. My husband didn't have any of those thoughts. They were all in my head. But there is the luxury of counseling and like working that out is challenging those beliefs, because I was using them early in my business as limiting beliefs to hold back my success in business.
Yes. And you are not alone.
Right. And I think a lot of women, and and like you, I attract a lot of women that I work with in business because they hear that I understand that. And I've already, I think it's always work we do, because it's like you get to a new level and a new stage and new things come up. But I think that knowing that this is part of the formula of success, of having and asking for help from a counselor to be able to work through that side. And then, for me, in my experience, it was me finding my own courage to have those conversations, because I thought I already knew how they were going to turn out. And we know where that goes, right?
Right. Yes. The ideas that we have on our head can just they can feel like facts.
Yes.
Right. So it isn't just like, oh, I'm thinking this, or what if. It just becomes like, nope, this is how it is. This is the truth. And so to be able to have somebody who can listen to you and to hear that, and then kind of help you like tease apart, now, what is the truth and what is just your idea of what the truth is? And have you looked into this, and have you asked, and have you done the research to really see, is that sort of the thing? And it's just amazing. But so many people, me included, have had that experience. And I think that's what happened, with that example of the woman, where I had gradually built up more clients, right? And so it was such a gradual thing. I was able to really pretty much be a stay-at-home mom if I had like 2 clients, right? Right. But then when those numbers gradually inch up, it's like, oh, I guess my time is going somewhere. But I didn't realize it. So I just felt like I was dropping balls, and just felt like, that whole idea of failure, which also is huge for lots of women. And we work a lot with this idea that if we can, and I heard it somewhere, so I won't pretend that it's my own, but there's something called like failing forward. This idea that failing is part of developing, it's part of growing. And that's a huge belief that we have here at True North, is just the developmental piece, that we're always growing. It doesn't stop at 21. We just continue developing and growing through all of life. And so what's been fun for me is working with women who are working on professional development. So as their business develops, that process of failing and feeling like, oh, I didn't do this right, and I wish I had done that, is basically how they also personally develop. So the process of professional development kind of like feeds our own personal development in ways that we never would have guessed. It stretches us, and it helps us to see things in a different way, and it gets us stronger and wiser, honestly.
I agree with that. And I don't think enough people talk about that, because I feel like I stumbled upon that myself. And I became so excited about the entrepreneurial journey, not just for like business goals, but when I think of like who I was 10 years ago, or who I was even 3 or 5 years ago, I am so excited about who I get to be in 5 years. Like that is the thing that lights me up, is like every day comes with new challenges. But when I think back, I'm like, wow, like I don't know that there's any other like pressure cooker like the entrepreneurial journey. And that's just my own experience, because that's how I grew so much and so fast. But I didn't expect that. That was a shocking gift once I already said yes to being an entrepreneur. So that's so awesome that you get to share that with your clients and support them on the personal side as they're being challenged, probably a bit unexpectedly, as we keep saying yes to newer and bigger goals and things like that.
Yeah. And it's a parallel process, right? So it's happening with my clients and it's happening with me. So it's one of those things where I can say, I'm not just speaking to you like I have this all together. I do not have it all together. And I'm always in this process of slipping and falling and thinking like, oh, I wish, looking at someone else and saying, oh, I love how they do that. And they look so put together and they look, wow, that's amazing. And I should do that. And why am I trying to do that? And that's not working out that way. But the more that and I don't always feel like this, right? So let's be honest. I'm not always like, oh, this is lovely. This horrible thing has happened. And I'm so delighted that I just failed. Like that is not always my first inclination. But if over time I look backward, I can say, okay, actually I really have learned from that. And there was no other way for me to do it. I had to go through it. There's a thing that a metaphor that I like to use called, I call it boulders to breadcrumbs. And it's this idea that it's basically kind of rooted in Zen and in Stoicism, but it's this idea that the obstacle is the path, right? Like I think it was Marcus Aurelius who said that, like the obstacle is the way or the obstacle is the path. And so if we look at what our problems are and see that as like a boulder. So I imagine you're walking through the woods and you see this huge boulder on your path. Mm-hmm. And then you think, oh, well, I guess I can't move forward. But if you can kind of like chip away at that boulder until it's all these little pieces, then you can see it as breadcrumbs. Then it's sort of, you can make that boulder into the path that you need to lead you to where it is that you need to go. And sometimes we know where we're going, and the vast majority of the time we think we know where we're going, and then we end up going in some other direction. But if we can more see the difficult times as this is part of the path, the obstacle is the path, right? Like that way we can just feel better about it. It's like, oh, here's a problem. It's like, yep, okay, that's the way that it is. This is the truth of what we have here. And so now we know we can look back in the past and see other boulders that we've had and see that, oh yeah, that actually, I'm really glad that happened because I grew from it. I got better from it. I came to this place that I never would have come to without it. Right.
Yeah. So, do you find that the work you do is helping women not be angry about the boulder? So like that shouldn't have been there. Like, why is that there? Like, it shouldn't be this hard. Right. And so it sounds like what you were explaining is like being at peace with it allows you to move through solution.
Yeah. So part of what we do is I like to think about feelings as little kids, right? Like 2-year-old toddlers. So all the feelings are good. So when people say, oh my gosh, I'm just more angry, I'm more irritable, I'm anxious, I'm all these feelings that we categorize as negative, then I imagine each feeling as being a little child. And if you can think of like a 2-year-old or maybe even like a 1.5-year-old, right? They're like, they want your attention. They're like, they're crying. You pick them up, you put them on your lap, you hold them and you kind of rock them and you say, take your time. It's all right. Take your time. I'm right here. What is it that you're trying to tell me? What do you need to tell me? Right? Then the child can say, this is what's upsetting me. So anxiety is usually saying things like, hey, I'm worried about you, right? I'm worried about you. I think this bad thing is going to get us. I'm really scared and I want you to be aware. So let's be very afraid and let's be very aware. Right? So if we look at anxiety and say, oh, okay, I got it. Thank you so much for telling me this. I hear you. Let me kind of pat you and hold you and rock you and soothe you and let you know that I'm the adult here. I got this. It's okay for you to be here. You stay here as long as you need to be here, anxiety. Like you can hang out on my lap as long as you need to. And with any child, once they get calmed down, then they're like, okay, I need to go play. See you later. Right. So they hop off your lap and they go play. So it's like the same with anger. Right. So anger is letting you know if you pick up anger and say, oh, look who's here. It's anger. Right. So it's not like, oh, you shouldn't be here. We're going to fix you and make you peace. It's like, nope, you're here right now. What is it that you want to tell me? And anger is usually that something is wrong. someone has done something to you that they shouldn't do. Something is not the way that it should do. We need to fix some things, right? Anger is really a very helpful emotion. It's good to have anger. It's not good to maybe express that anger in ways that, that are not necessarily helpful. But it's good to really hear the story that it has to tell you. And then the same thing, say, okay, I hear you. I'm so glad you came here and told me this, right? And
Yes.
I'm an adult. I got this. Okay. So I want you to relax because I got this. You can be here as long as you want to be here. And then anger is like, all right, then I've cried. I've gotten out what I needed to get out. And then they're like, okay, I see that shiny thing over there. And then it goes away. So you basically just kind of let all that's something that I believe in, right? Like just letting all the feelings come and then letting them go, right? Kind of getting the gift of what it is that they're here for, because all the feelings really do benefit us. Right.
Yes.
But then it's cool when peace comes, right? Like when peace comes, like, woo, I don't want to like, favor peace over the other kids, but it's like, it's so nice to see you.
That's right. Your metaphor is so amazing. I think anyone listening right now is going to remember where they were at, whether it's eating ice cream in a bank parking lot. Because for me, that's so powerful. So, okay, this is what I heard. When you ignore a toddler throwing a fit, it becomes a full-on temper tantrum.
Thank you very much.
Is that not true for the same thing when you ignore anger or you ignore anxiety? Is like, it doesn't just go away. It gets bigger and bigger and louder and louder until you listen. And the toddlers just want to be heard. Like whatever was going on in their head, they wanted to be heard, soothed, and then they're on to the next thing.
And there's space for them. There's space for them, right? We have these feelings. We're made this way. I remember reading once about tears, like when we cry tears, the tears that we cry when we're grieving or we're sad are chemically different from the tears that we cry if we just like laugh really hard or if we have like allergies, right? And I remember hearing that and reading that and thinking, okay, I will never forget that. I will always remember that. And that must mean that it is the right thing to cry, right? It must mean that it is good to get, you're probably getting toxic stuff out of your system, right?
Yes.
If you're crying. And children do that, and they're usually very natural and healthy, right? They haven't been sort of like formed by the world, like especially little kids. Like babies cry. We don't get mad at them because they're crying. We're like, oh yeah, you're crying because that's what babies do. And that's what you're feeling. They're congruent, what we call congruent. So they feel sad, they cry. They feel mad, they're like, wah! They still might cry, but it's like a mad cry,
Right.
A different kind of cry. Or they like, stomp their little feet or they do something like that. And it's like, okay, they're happy, they light up, their bodies move and they're really excited. So if we can try to get back to that to some degree, right, in a way that's acceptable for being an adult and being in the world, then I think we can be much healthier and get through things much better.
Yes, I agree so much. I am interested in you sharing what are some of the top tendencies that you work with high achieving women on? Like, what are they experiencing? Because when our listeners are listening, I want them to be like, oh, that's how that's what's going on. Or, if they can see themselves in it and feel not alone and know that there's help. So what are some of the things you work on with them?
Huge reasons why people come to me are that they get burned out, right? So they feel like something in their life is falling apart, whether it's their family, relationships, their work, something has broken, essentially. Mm-hmm. Usually that's when people start coming to counseling, or they're like, they can tell that they're teetering on that. So some of the big issues that they experience are, like I said, perfectionism, procrastination. Those two really go together. So I actually did my dissertation on what keeps people from finishing their dissertations because I had been a huge procrastinator for the vast majority of my life. And I was pretty afraid that I would get to the point of what they call ABD, which is all but dissertation, where you have done everything for your doctorate, but you haven't finished your dissertation. And so I thought, if I don't study something that I'm really interested in and that, then there's no way I'm going to get this degree finished. And that's going to be, for me, that would be horrible. Again, perfectionistic ideas. That'd be horrible. That would be the worst. That would be very extreme, horrible things, right? In my head. So I was like, okay, this is what I'll do. I'll see if they'll let me do a dissertation on what keeps people from finishing their dissertations. So that's what I did. And I basically looked at those two areas, at perfectionism and procrastination. And I studied people who had done every single thing for their doctorates, but they were not finishing. And I gave them different surveys on that. And so what we find is that people who are perfectionistic also often procrastinate because they don't want to do something not well enough. They don't want to fail. They're so used to doing things well and getting A's and getting gold stars that the idea of getting a blue star is like, oh, I don't know if I can handle that. And so then they say, well, I just won't even try. I just won't even do that. Or they say, I'll do that later because the thought of not doing it well enough is just too overwhelming. But solitaire is not too overwhelming, right? Yes. Or this video game isn't, or scrolling through my phone, or, binge watching Netflix or some episode of something, right? That doesn't feel horrible. And it temporarily makes you feel better. So those are two things that are huge that I work with people on. Depression, again, there are just so many balls up in the air, right? That it can just wear you down. You can just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm worn out. I've been doing this. I feel like I can't. I feel like I'm not moving ahead. I'm not making progress. I'm not being productive enough. People say that all the time. I'm not being productive. I'm not getting things done.
I hear that every once in a while too.
I have prescribed your podcast to so many people, but it's this idea of I'm not moving ahead, and that feels bad. That it feels like failing, right? Anxiety is huge, especially right now. Anxiety is huge for like who's not feeling anxiety right now? I don't know. Right. I can't think of too many people who haven't been experiencing that. But again, those things can really be huge. And also grief. So women who are professionals and who are running their own businesses have every single feeling and thing happen with them that everybody else does. But they also have a business to run, and they also have like these other things going on. And so grief is huge. I do a lot of work with grief. Just relationship issues, right? These are the things that come up, and it can feel like a lot of times they feel like I can't just sort of like take some time and deal with this. I can't walk away and take some time and deal with this. Or I used to live a life where I could just call in and say I'm sick, right? Now I feel like I can't do that. I'm the boss. I can't call the boss, which is me, and say I'm sick, right? And so we kind of talk about that. Like, actually, you kind of can, right? And if you can't, let's figure out a way to get the help like you described, right? Let's figure out a way for you to get the supports and get things in place so that you can take time and you can cry and you can have your bathroom floor moments where you're just like losing it, right? You can have that, and you can also know that every single thing isn't completely falling apart around you because you're not there.
I think this is so important to be talking about, because I think that there's a lot of stigma around, high achieving or being successful, that it can't be and, having a meltdown and depression. And look, today's Monday. Last Wednesday, I had a full-on meltdown. So the whole country went to crap in one day. I came off of a meeting. I was getting sick the Tuesday before. It was the perfect recipe for a meltdown.
Yes.
And I have gotten much better at navigating it. And I went to bed at 7:00 that night. And I just, I have my go-to bag of it's not going to not happen. So when it happens, what do I do? And I have tears in my eyes just talking to you right now, because I think that I hope that my vulnerability and breaking the same thing you were saying is we can go do these amazing things and not be perfect. No one is, but let's talk about it so that I guess the only gift I want is for people not to feel alone.
Yes.
It wasn't until I got a close group of girlfriends that are also high achieving business owners where we could have honest conversations and break those walls down, where I'm like, We're all navigating some parts of this, right?
Yes.
And just giving ourselves that permission to now not judge it and work through it and try and show up our best. But yeah.
Yes, exactly what you're saying. And that feeling of, I mean, because you know what that feels like, where you feel like you're the only one, right? Or you feel like there's something to be ashamed about with this. People believe that I'm doing this, or they believe I'm this person who doesn't have these problems. And so maybe I shouldn't let them know that. And then to look at someone who you completely admire, you're amazed by what it is that they do. And then they say, oh yeah, exactly like you said, I was just weeping the other day, right? Or 5 minutes before this conversation, I was weeping. And then you can say, oh my gosh, me too. And I didn't know. I thought that at this point we weren't supposed to do that. And it's like, no, that's not true. But that feeling of, okay, now we're in it together. Now you have that group. And that's actually something that I'm so excited to hear you. So excited not to hear that, you have a hard time, but I'm glad to hear how that felt to you to have a group of people, because I'm just starting to do masterminds with people. And what I'm finding is that I'm wanting to provide a space where women who come from different areas, they have different types of careers, so that there's not competition. They can come together and they can help each other out. So I call it like passing the Kleenex when you need to, right? Like, right now where everything's online. So we're like online passing, online passing the Kleenex box. But essentially, where you can be there for them when they're going through those moments. And part of what we talk about is not necessarily, oh, here's what's wrong with my business. It's more like, my mother fell and broke her hip, and I'm having to spend hours and hours and hours at the hospital, and I'm worried about her. But at the same time, I do feel like I need to bake these cookies for the holiday party, right? Like people who are in that sort of situation. And then other people say, you know what, here's what you need to, I was in that same situation. How can I help you? Right? I'm right here for you. And then, or it can be something business related where somebody can say, I'm hiring and I don't really know how to do that. And I'm worried about it. And I know I'm holding off on doing it because I feel like I don't want to make a mistake and cause a problem. And then somebody else is like, here's a book that I read, right? Yes. Or here's listen to this podcast or read this book, or you and I need to talk later and we're going to discuss this and we're going to get this figured out, right? Yeah. That sort of thing. So what happens in these masterminds is they get a chance to be in, each person gets a chance to be in that, what we call the hot seat, where they can say, here's an issue and I need the accountant to help me out with what's going on financially. I need this other person to be my cheerleader. I need this other person to tell me about a great attorney I can use. I need these different sorts of things. And then everybody just completely listens to what that person's issue is. And we find out what kind of support do you need. They let us know. And then we start problem solving if that's what they want. Or if they're like, look, I just want somebody to say I'm going to be okay. Yeah. And that I'm not the worst, and that you've maybe felt this way. Can somebody, just one person, say that you felt like I felt before, right? And then everybody raises their hand and they're like, I feel like that pretty much 24/7, right?
Yes.
Every other Wednesday, I feel that, right?
Yes.
Something like that. And then it's like, okay, that's all I needed. And they'll say, yes, I was just like that when I was in your position, or, or no, I haven't experienced that, but I have this other thing that's really similar, and here's how I can kind of connect with you on that. And so you get this sense of like connectedness. You get this sense of, we are a group, we are a team, we can get through this together, and we're going to do that. Right. And I'm personally in a mastermind, and that's what we've experienced. We've cried together. We've like cheered together. I mean, we've been so happy for each other, and we've been so just distraught for each other. It's like, where it's just like a kick in the gut, right? Where it's like, I hate it that happened for you. But you know what? I'm holding your hand. We're right here. We're not going anywhere. And
I love that you're creating that space and creating that space for women to have that mastermind experience. I have created my own mastermind with a handful of some of my friends, and we meet every other Friday, and it's exactly what you're describing. Sometimes we are talking about the most random stuff, like personal. Sometimes we just need a pick-me-up. And then other times that we bring it in hot. Like many of us, we all have shared at some point some really like deep things. And we know that this is the space and time for it, all wrapped up in just really supporting each other, giving each other that space. I see masterminds in the way that I use them for myself as extreme self-care.
Yes.
It just is.
Yes.
It helps me. I first of all, I look forward to it and just building those relationships. And for me, it's the giving. It's not just the receiving. It's almost like I know that if I need it, it's there. But oftentimes, it's just about being able to be in relationship with other people that are in similar situations.
Yeah, and they get it. It's like they get what's going on with you, and that feels so, so good.
So what inspired you to make the shift to add masterminds to your business?
Well, I always sort of wanted that. So when I pictured True North, like the dream, right? Because we all love the dream part, right? So when I was doing the dream, it's like, this would be great. This will be a place where we see, so I mention women a lot. We see everyone. So we have clients who are not women, but we wanted to be, or I wanted to have a practice that really did look at the special nuances that women go through, just to say, hey, we see you. You know, we understand that there are differences between what women go through and what other people go through. And so what my idea was is that, yes, I wanted a therapy practice and I wanted excellent clinicians. I wanted just therapists who were like top notch, doing a fantastic job in their area. So they had their own niche, their own area that they specialized in. And so that we can say, oh, you've got an eating disorder? Cool. We've got a person who's got that. You know, oh, you're running your own business and you want somebody who gets that? Yay, that's Janelle, right?
Right.
And so we have anxiety, we have an anxiety specialist, that sort of thing. And then I thought, I've never felt good enough about people just getting better. That was one thing that I never felt like finished with in terms of psychology. And so our tagline is feeling better is just the beginning, right? The idea was like, I want you to thrive. So when I work with clients, it's like, we don't want you to just get undepressed or like unanxious. That's cool if you can work through those things. Obviously, that's a huge goal. But I always want to know, what is your end goal? What is your dream? What is like we talk about making the unachievable actually achievable? What is it that you think, oh, I can't, you know, it'd be really cool, but like, oh, I can't do that. I don't think that's possible. And I'm like, no. Tell me what's really cool. Tell me what would be really cool. And like, we're going to write it down. I'm always like, grab it. Here's your pad of paper. Here's my pad of paper. We're writing this down. We're going to make this happen. Right. And we're going to figure out how to make that boulder into breadcrumbs. Right. Let's not put limits on ourselves. Right. Let's see if there are ways to make this happen. And a lot of times there are. And so that was the developmental piece. So our name is True North Counseling and Development. So the counseling part, we want to be able to meet people right where they are. Right? When they're in pain and when they're going through, it's like, yep, we're here for you. And we want the developmental side. So I'm picturing masterminds, classes, just different sorts of groups where women can kind of get together and maybe have like, oh, here's a place to come if you have the idea for a business and you kind of want some other people who are in that area or who are in that sort of like, I'm just in the idea stage and I'm not quite sure if I'm ready to go here. And you can just hash stuff out with other people, right? So I want us to be the place where people come in Kentucky. Now, since we've made our practice online as well as in person, I mean, we can have people from the total west side of the state or the total east side of the state that can meet and can come together in a way that we weren't able to do before. And now we can, which is so exciting, right? Like,
the unexpected opportunity out of COVID.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's been so great for us. Again, it seemed like a huge obstacle. The week of like March 13th, I remember I still had bags under my eyes from like not sleeping for a week, trying to figure out how do we safely move over to online and make sure that all the confidentiality, all that stuff is together. That was a rough time, but we made it through and we're better for it now.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Okay. So you shared with us, your journey of, seeing your girlfriend at school with a nice wardrobe and all the way through going to school and then developing your own practice or your own group. And you've shared with us a little bit about what that vision is, and you're growing into that. So you're also on your entrepreneurial journey. And one of the things that I wanted to share with our listeners is that you are inside my Leverage Lab program. And I was curious, and I haven't asked you this question and got an answer, so this is all new for me. But I wanted to ask, so you do this work, you help high achieving women. What was it that drew you to Leverage Lab? What challenge was it that you thought Leverage Lab could help you with?
When I think about the work that I do, part of what I do is helping people with organization. Part of that, I'm a huge fan of ClickUp. I'm a huge fan of making a list, breaking it down into small things. I love a good routine and writing that down and practicing it and that sort of thing. However, it's just like anything else. I can't provide my own therapy to myself. I can't do that. Right? I wish I could. That would be nice, but I can't. And so I need to look outside of me for therapy, and I need to look outside of me for support. So Leverage Lab has been a great place for me to get new ideas, for me to just see other women. I mean, one of the things that I really enjoy about it is the group coaching. Mm-hmm. So I might have a question about something that I can ask you about, because again, you are like the bee's knees in terms of productivity, and seriously, like you're just so good at it, and you're able, people can ask you a question and you're like, yes, here's what you do. You just bam, it just comes right off the top of your head. You're like, you do this, you do that. And it's like, that's a great idea. That's exactly what they should do. Wow. And so I not only benefit from being able to ask you questions, but also to hear the questions that they're asking and saying, yes, I have that exact same question, right? And I just totally forgot, or I have that exact same issue. It's so nice to see what she's recommending to her. And I'm going to go ahead and try to put that into place in my own life and see if that helps, right?
Yes. I have gotten the backseat of years and years of one-on-one coaching to where this may be similar for you in counseling, is that every client thinks they're incredibly different, right? Their problems are unique. I hear it every single time I work with a new client, some version of, I'm probably the worst you ever saw. Are you sure you can help me? Right?
Yes.
And I wait for it, and I always answer it, no, absolutely not. I don't even see it that way. It's not like I'm grading my clients. And I wouldn't say yes to working with a client if I didn't think I could help them. So years and years of seeing these threads and these similarities and similar conversations happening. And then I did group coaching, and I was like, it was mind-blowing that I didn't connect the dots, that it wasn't just when they got coached. It was every time anyone was getting coached, everyone in the group was like, that was me too. Or, oh my gosh, I couldn't put words to that same challenge, but I've had that challenge. And that just filled a hole for me. And I was blown away at myself for not knowing that was going to be the big aha for a lot of people, because I had already observed these consistencies that were happening. And now we get to bring that to the surface in the group coaching sessions and really serve. I mean, you can sit back and just listen and get so much value, or you can come to the table and, like you said, go in the hot seat, bring your question, get coached. And Janelle, I'm glad you said that. Here's one of the ahas that I've had around that too, as I serve people through Leverage Lab, is that oftentimes, it's more powerful for immediate impact when you're not the one being coached. Now, I'm not the counselor, but I have a theory about this.
What's your theory?
When we are being coached and we're in it, we're in the story, we're in the experience, and we're filtering what the coach, me, says through all of that. And it takes longer to process, and you kind of have to hear it. When you're watching someone else get coached, it's like you're not attached to your own story. You're just like, oh, I'm like Cindy, or I'm like Janelle. Okay, what did they say? And then you take it unjudgmental to yourself, and you start applying it. And I literally got goosebumps on my body, because I've just been so fascinated by how that works for those that watch versus those that are getting coached. And what is that difference? And it's, to me, I think it's whatever is going on in our heads in that moment of being coached.
I think you are completely right about that. And I wonder too, this is just me like guessing. I wonder too if there's almost like this anxiety, right? Because whatever it is that they're talking about, they might feel like either embarrassed about it to some degree, or feel like, oh, or just have shame about it, or whatever the not so lovely feeling is that they're feeling, right? So then and then it is that question of judgment, right? Like, oh my gosh, does Amber think I am the worst? Like, if I say this, is Amber gonna, either think I'm stupid or dumb, or like, that's a dumb problem. How's that your or that sort of thing, right?
Right.
And then if you're watching, if you're kind of vicariously learning, right, and you're seeing it happen, you're not in the hot seat. You're just leaning back, You're
just receiving.
You can just like lay back and watch it happen and like take your notes. And that's also, I think, what's helpful too, is that we can look back at what you have recorded. Mm-hmm. Right. So instead of because I've done that, I've gotten information from you and I'm like, and I'm scribbling like a mad woman trying to write every single thing down. I'm like, why am I doing that? Because I know I can just like, play this back. But I think that's the way that I think. It's hard for me to think without a pen in my hand.
Right. Your processing is your,
Right. But still, I think I think you're completely spot on with that.
Yeah. That has really been the unexpected magic. I mean, I love serving my clients in Leverage Lab. And when I get to see a new way of being able to serve and then has these unexpected surprises, that is why I've leaned so much into, Leverage Lab in my own business. I just actually shared, by the time we're recording this, I think it was last week, my North Star, which was all about, Leverage Lab. And it's because we have kind of uncovered a new way that I can serve and serve more people. And being able to do that in a way that allows people to have that transformational coaching, for me, that's my big why, right? Like, I want people to come feeling non-judgmental. No, hold on. I don't want them to feel judged. Yes. I'm going to get it out. I don't want them to feel judged. And that happens. Obviously, I do that in one-on-one coaching, but that happens inside Leverage Lab is that you, again, and this is just all wasn't even planned, but it comes back to full circle of when you have your close group of people that you can see are going through similar situations, just knowing you're not alone allows you to move through solution and not into it's me, or, I'm the only one with these challenges and I don't know how I'm going to ask for help because I feel shame about it. And inside Leverage Lab, you're like, oh, we're all dealing with similar challenges and we're all growing our businesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we feel better. There's a researcher named Kelly McGonigal who has done research and she, as well as another woman whose name has left me right now. So other woman, I'm sorry, because I know you've done this too. However, she's done research where it's called Tend and Befriend. And it's this idea that women tend to, now this may work for you with men and women, but women tend to, when there is stress or there's problems, they tend to come together and take care of each other. And part of that process helps with the chemicals that are going on in their brains in terms of them being able to feel better. And so what we know about groups that is different from one-on-one is that tend and befriend thing can just naturally occur. If you offer a space and make it safe and make it where people can do that, right? Which is what you're doing, then that's going to naturally happen. People will do that for each other and everyone benefits. Everyone gets whatever that chemical is. I wasn't the best at that part of it.
No worries.
I do the best in mind and brain, but whatever that chemical is, that's like, it's maybe oxytocin. It might be oxytocin, but it's whatever it is that helps you to feel soothed and helps you to feel like, shh, it's okay. Like you're all right. That sort of feeling that happens when you're in these situations. So exactly. I think you were completely on track with what's going on and making a difference,
That's awesome. And I don't often know the research. It's just my own experiences where I'm like, what's working, what's not working. Oh, there's something there, right? And leaning into the things that are getting results. And So I love that there is research behind it. And maybe I should do a bit more research too, other than my own experiences. But yes, Leverage Lab has been an amazing opportunity to serve. And we serve men and women inside Leverage Lab, and I coach men and women. But yeah, a lot of my business is women because I also attract women that feel like, oh, like she gets me. She's been on this path.
Yeah.
She's a mom. She's ambitious. She's, navigated her own team. And that's why I share what I share, is that it like attracts like, right? And when you feel comfortable and you don't feel judged, then you let that down and you can ask for help. And maybe that's the title of this episode. I don't know what the title of this episode is yet, but I mean, full circle is ask for help, whether it's a counselor or your mastermind or joining Leverage Lab or getting one-on-one coaching, is that I truly, and I think you will agree now, is that we are not meant to do this alone. I don't think we are meant to try and figure this all out by ourselves. And having the pressure and the thought that we should have it all figured out or that we should be doing it on ourselves is unnecessary. And
it gets in our way. If we feel better about ourselves, we know this. As psychologists, we know this. When we are feeling good about ourselves and have a sense of self-efficacy, which is the idea that we can do what we want to do and what we're setting out to do, right? Like we can actually complete the task on our task list.
Yes.
If we have that sense, we are so much more likely to excel and to do great. But if we're feeling bad about ourselves in any kind of way, it's like a mean coach in our head. If we have a mean coach in our head who's telling us we're horrible and blah, 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 we don't do as well as if we have the coach who says, hey, I'm right here with you. This we can work on. This you're doing great. I'm so proud of you about this. Let's do more of that. And hey, this is an area that I want to see you work on, right? And I want to see you let's put a little more effort in this area. I know you can do it, right? That sort of thing. That feels better than like, you are the worst. and give me 5,000 push-ups, like drop and give me 5,000, right? It's like, you might get a result, but the energy that comes from I'm on your side is much more likely to help push you, but maybe in pushing even sounds like the wrong word, but to help support you basically toward what it is that you want to achieve.
Yes. Okay. So you were able to put great words on it. I do a lot of things in coaching, but I really boiled it down to two things. One is I always say I partner with you on this journey. So they're not alone. And two, I feel like it is my job and my role to hold what's possible for them, even when they don't see it for themselves. Right. It reminded me when you said you pull out their big why and what's next for them and you have them write that down. As you were speaking, I was just like nodding my head because, when you say yes to coaching or a new opportunity, in those moments, you're like, I can do anything. And I ask for help and like, I'm going to share with you everything I've got. And then the journey happens. And I believe that a good coach is going to say, no. We already agreed on the finish line. You don't get to go backwards. You don't get to step out. Like, you may not see it, but I'm seeing it for you. Come on. Like,
and borrow my faith. Borrow my faith right now. Right. I'll let you hold it for a little while until you can kind of catch on with me too.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
And so like when a client, has natural tendencies of up and down, like have you seen those memes where it says the day in the life of an entrepreneur and they're like, I got this. I don't have this. I can't do this. This is like, oh my gosh, I just did the next $1 million idea. And it's like up and down, right? I think a good coach will like level you out. Like, okay, let's keep on the path and we're not letting you dip too low and we're not letting you go too wild on top to where you like abort mission. We want to keep the path.
Yes. I think that's an excellent way of describing it. And also just to normalize that, right? Like just to let the person know, of course, you are feeling on top of the world right now. But we all know the day before you were looking the opposite of that, right? The day before you were like, I will never do this. This will never work. You can get so down. It's like, okay, remember this. Let's write this down. Let's remember the next time that we go through this. And that's something that we do, right? Like I would like, okay, let's write this down. you were feeling like that. What were the things that you were saying to yourself when you were feeling at your worst?
Right.
Now, what would you say? Like, how can you counteract that? And so let's write down the counters for that, because we know this is going to happen again in maybe like 3 seconds, right?
Yes.
In about 3 minutes, you're going to have another low, right? So let's get ready. Here's our list. Here's how to kind of deal with that, while at the same time giving yourself some grace and saying, yes, you're allowed to feel like you are totally allowed to feel bad, right? Let's not have that be the goal, that you don't ever feel bad or you don't ever feel like super excited. It's like, yeah, we really want that. But we also want you to know that, I used to say this to my kids all the time. Feelings are like clouds in the sky. They come and they go, right? If we can just let them like come and go, almost like we're like a sieve, right? If we can just let them come and go, we're going to be so much better off, right? And we don't have to hold on to them. We also don't have to push them away. We can just like say, okay, you're here for right now.
Right.
And then that's cool. I'm going to try to be as cool as I can with that. And then when you leave, I may be really glad to see you leave, or I might be sad to see you leave, depending on where I am, right? But I also can just say, okay, whatever, all the feelings are going to basically keep going through rotation. Yes. So let me find a way to be okay as much as I can with all of them.
Yeah. I think that as you're speaking there again too, is the analogy that I give is that it's my job to fill up your toolbox, right? And those are like the strategies and the methods and the how-tos, which you may not know, which is the training part of Leverage Lab, right? Like I'm giving you the tools to fill up your toolbox. The coaching is how to apply those tools. And the mindset work is to remind you have a toolbox. Pull the tools out. Now, what do we need to talk about why we're procrastinating on pulling that tool out? Or why do we need to talk about why you're acting like you don't have a toolbox? And that's the mindset work. So it's like the mindset and the coaching of applying it, and then the tools are the how-to. And that's also just all happened organically with experience, because I realized, just strategy alone, great, you'll learn something. And just mindset alone, it doesn't matter how much you want something. If you don't have the how, what are you going to do? And so it is this perfect balance of having a combination of that, I think, to be able to move forward on whatever your own journey is and whatever your own experience will be, using a combination of strategy and mindset.
Yeah. Well, I've very much benefited from, again, listening to your podcast and being part of Leverage Lab and being able to be involved in that. So I appreciate that you have this expertise and that you share it with us. It means a lot.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Janelle. So if anyone would like to, if they live in Lexington or they just want to find out more about you, how do they find you and reach out to you?
Yes. So you're allowed to find out about me, even if you don't live in Lexington.
Yes, I did want to say that.
Yes. So in terms of therapy, I only see people in Kentucky. Now, they can be anywhere in Kentucky, but they still need to be in the state. That's the way that our license works. However, in terms of things like presentations or speaking, I do things like that as well. So that I can do kind of anywhere. Right.
That's right. So, especially virtually
especially
now.
Online. I know. Especially online, which has worked out really well for me. I've really enjoyed that. But actually, for the people who are listening to your podcast today, you never know how a conversation is going to go. So I was like, okay, let me give them what I give my clients, which I think is really helpful, which is basically, I'm always saying, you totally need to read this book. Like, you have to read this. You have to read this. So what I would like to give your clients is a list of the books that are my tried and trues. I keep coming back to them. When I'm working with people who, again, are trying to develop and trying to grow, we keep coming back to these fantastic books. So if they go to True North Lex, so that's TrueNorthLex.com/Amber, they can get a list of books and be able to see what areas fit best for what issue they might be working on.
I cannot wait to get my hands on the books. I love a good book. I think that's a great recommendation. So we'll make sure we link out to that in the show notes. And then if they are, I'm assuming they would just go to the same website if they're in Kentucky.
Yes. So truenorthlex.com is the best way to get to us.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Janelle.
Thank you, Amber. This was really fun. It's nice talking with you.
You too. Wasn't that conversation with Janelle amazing? I just love it when it's an easy conversation and there's so many unexpected ahas. I sure hope you enjoyed this episode of Productivity Straight Talk as much as I enjoyed my conversation with Janelle. And I also hope you found the ahas to be valuable. And as you know, no change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So I'm not sure what you heard because I truly believe that we all hear what we need to hear at the right time from the right person. But if today you heard anything around, I need additional support. I want additional support to grow my business, to have a place where I can level up my skill set, improve my mindset, and really have that collaborative community, then I invite you to come check out Leverage Lab. Again, Leverage Lab is my coaching, training, and accountability experience. It's a monthly membership, so love it or leave it. My promise to you is that inside Leverage Lab, you will experience transformational and empowering coaching, simple yet impactful training, and the support of a collaborative community. So to find out all that is included and behind the scenes of Leverage Lab, head on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. And if you're listening to this the week this episode goes live, between February 1st and February 5th, I'm offering a special limited time discount of $150 off your first month with us inside Leverage Lab. I know that if you are a busy, overwhelmed business owner who has big dreams and wants to learn how to leverage yourself, leverage your time, leverage organization, and leverage people, then Leverage Lab is the place for you. I invite you and welcome you inside Leverage Lab. So head on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.